And boys and girls, welcome to my channel. I'm the MXGP PT, and for today what I have in here it is the MXGP Pro. So this game was developed by the Milestones SRI and they are using Unreal Engine 4. So MXGP, it's pretty much a yearly series of motocross games from Milestones. Milestones is the unique developer of this type of games, and usually they release one game each year, which sometimes doesn't really get too much of a different experience. And they decided to go with the Pro version, and this Pro version, it's a little bit different than the others. I mean, there are pretty much the same tracks, but different. But they decided to have a little bit more realistic approach, just like Dirt Rally adds. So this game it's a little bit more realistic and challenging than the other MXGP games. So for the settings, what I'm using in here, it is in the absolute minimum settings. So if you put the low preset, you can still disable stuff like reflections, bloom, and well, you can raise the maximum frame rate and you can disable ambient occlusion. I'm using a custom resolution in here to 960 per 540, so in case you want to know how to create a custom resolution, just let me know on the description of the video. Okay, so I decided to test two different tracks. I started with Pietra Murata, which is a track during the sunny day. I decided to go with sunny day, and the average is 32 frames per second and the 1% low of 21. Although, yeah, of course, I decided to try out another track, and the other track it was Agueda, which is from my country, Portugal, but I decided to use the wet environment, so there are reflections on the floor, and the terrain looks much better, thanks to the fact that it's wet, and the average was 29 and the 1% low of 21. So, what I want to say about the performance is that it's not always satisfying. So most of the time when you are behind most of the players or opponents, you get a performance sometimes lower than 30 frames per second or sometimes even worse. So during that time it feels that it's not really a great experience, okay, especially because this game it is supposed to be a little bit more realistic and challenging, and so having better frame rate could help you out a little bit with you know, with the gameplay. But what happens is as long as you go a little bit more forward to the tracks, and I mean, when you don't have so much opponents in front of you, let's imagine that you are on the 6th place or something, or a 3rd, what happens is the performance it is much better because the game don't need to render all the motorcycles in front of you. So when that happens, usually the frame rate it is above 30 frames per second, or sometimes a little bit like high 20s, like 29 or 28 in the worst case scenario. Okay, so I could consider this a little bit like potato, okay, because the low settings are actually bad because they don't have any shadows at all, but still it doesn't look that bad because the terrain is very well detailed. But I mean, the frame rate for me it's the problem. Having the game dipping down to lower than 30 frames per second, sometimes even lower than 25, a game that wants to be kind of a simulator of the motocross, and when you are worse, like for example on the last place or something, it is when you need to drive better to overtake all the opponents, it is when the game is going to perform worse and it's going to be more difficult. So I'm not really sure how I can classify my experience with MXGP Pro and the performance, so I will leave that to you, and so you decide if it is worth to you or not. Well, let's talk about being worthy or not. The game costs 50 bucks by the time of this video on Steam. On my country it's 50 euros in fact. But you can get this game through Kinguin for 23 euros. It's less than half of the price, so I think it's a great deal in case you are interested in this game. So I left the links on the description for the Kinguin and Steam, and if you want to buy the game, you have those two shops there. Steam, obviously everybody knows everything about it, but if you want to buy through Kinguin, follow that link and enjoy the discounts, okay? So guys, I think that's all that I want to talk about MXGP Pro. Hope you did enjoy the video, and I do hope to see you soon in another video. But keep enjoying if you want to see more gameplay of Pietra Murata and this track, which is actually Agueda. So goodbye guys, think a lot.